test is really unique and stands out, that you have so many options.
The sort of resource that the test is providing for the filmmaking community almost can't be qualified. ASC members have consulted this tool, and every year we come back and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
So we are here again for our third lens test, the ultimate full frame lens test.
We're back, round 3. It's really amazing to come back and do this test again.
I can't believe that we are back. The first time around, we did a vintage lens test with 7 sets of lenses. And then the second time we did an anamorphic lens test, which was 13 sets.
And this time we are doing full frame lenses.
This lens test wouldn't nearly be possible without our sponsors and partners this time around.
It's just so cool coming in here and seeing how dedicated everyone is and how all the manufacturers and private lens owners want to just jump on board because they know how important having a resource like this is going to be.
The ultimate anamorphic lens test was phenomenal. I have spent countless hours going through and scrutinizing those tests, and I can't believe that they're actually topping it with the ultimate full frame lens test.
This test is ginormous, it's big. There's so much glass that we are testing. We have 20 sets of full frame lenses.
A set of lenses, it might be 5 lenses, and if they're all a T14,
that's 20 rounds of lens tests we have to do just for one set.
8 days from load in, pre-light shooting to load out.
we are just testing lenses for 5 full days.
I don't think I've ever seen this many lenses in one place outside of a rental house. We were doing nearly 100 lenses this time.
There's a lot of footage. When this test is done, we'll have shot close to 600 videos, close to 2,000 clips just for the tests alone.
This is a growing library, 40 sets of lenses for you to compare. That's why we're in the same location, the same lights placed in the same spots, the same test. Now for a third time.
One of my favorite things about being on this set now for the third time is just watching the crew. Watching the crew work in perfect unison. It's like a symphony.
We really need everyone to be perfect. And whether that's Corey, our model, turning her head the same way, sitting the same way, or our first AC on the main test setup, hitting her focus perfect.
The flow here on set is amazing. You've got A camera doing the actual lens test, then the lenses go to B camera, then into projection.
It was just such a rush and so fun to be a part of that crew and watching it work like such a well-oiled machine.
Here we are with ShareGrid and old fast glass with this obvious large format test. You know, this is the trend in the industry right now. I think this is what would be most useful to look at.
I do know full frame is here and it's growing. I can tell with trends what people are searching for and what people are buying and what people are renting. And that was a huge reason why ShareGrid wanted to partner again with Old Fast Glass to do this third iteration of our cinema lens library, which is the ultimate full frame lens test.
The writing was on the wall. Full frame cinematography was going to be coming and it was here to stay, but it's not necessarily new to cinematography.
Full frame has become one of the words we're using for a larger than Super 35 or Super 16 millimeter format. You'll also hear VistaVision, LF, large format. These are different ways of describing 36 by 24 millimeter sensor size or film size.
Full frame is a concept that's adopted from the still camera world. And what happened in the 1920s is we had motion picture format already. And that was 35 millimeters wide, and it ran vertically through the camera. And a man named Oscar Bernack, who was working for Leica cameras, and he decided to take that 35 millimeter motion picture film and turn it on its side. And that created a film gate that was 36 millimeters wide by 24 millimeters tall. is exactly the same thing as motion picture film, but it's turned on its side and now it's 8 perforations wide. And that became known as the 135 still format. Then when digital cameras came about, many years later, they started offering inexpensive digital still cameras that had smaller sensors that we started to call crop cameras. So then the regular 135 format became full frame compared to crop cameras. In the 1950s, when widescreen films were coming about and anamorphic lenses were coming out, Paramount wanted to compete with anamorphic, and they created the VistaVision format.
The then head of the camera department at Paramount, Loyal Griggs, took a Stein 8-perf duo color camera and turned it on its side, cut out the middle of the aperture so that it was one continuous frame, and he created the first VistaVision camera, which they used to shoot White Christmas. And for the purposes of motion picture, that's when full frame was born.
Quickly, cinematographers found out that there were aesthetics behind the larger format look.
We understand the differences of shooting 16 millimeter versus 35 millimeter. Again, there's a resolution difference, but there's also an optical property difference. There's a different aspect of the way that the focal length relates to depth of field with the format.
The aesthetic that the field of view provides, the working distances, the magnification, those are all things that change with a larger format. That movement from a normal field of view being like a 27 to 35 mil, now being maybe like a 40 to 55 mil on the larger format. Now digital's catching up to film, and we're getting professional camera bodies that can actually shoot large format cinema.
Because of using full frame cameras like the 5D, you sort of learned how to have this particular aesthetic and cinematography vocabulary that involves, slightly rocking your focus a bit, especially when you were shooting wider open, which was an aesthetic that, a lot of people preferred then on those lenses and still prefer now. And that became incorporated into the aesthetics of an entire generation of cinematographers. And now that style has pulled all the way through to the most high-end, precise cameras and lenses on the market.
So now that we have all these cameras, we also have to have lenses that cover this. Because as the imager gets larger, the image circle projected from the lens has to be bigger. So manufacturers are suddenly scrambling to provide the marketplace with more full frame glass.
Zeiss took their photo lenses that were designed for full frame and turned them into cinematography motion picture lenses. Canon jumped on Schneider with the Xenons, and then it really took off when you had companies like Sigma and Tokina and Rokinon jumping on making larger format full frame motion picture lenses. We have entered this golden age of motion picture lenses where you just have almost endless options. You have everything from your entry level, really affordable, gets the job done stuff to the highest end, well-established 100-year-old motion picture lens manufacturers. You have rehousings that people have adopted. You have these really obscure vintage lenses.
Now you suddenly could use your favorite stills, full frame glass, and now there's a whole new generation of lenses coming out. And I think it's interesting for cinematographers to explore the possibilities.
I think when you choose a lens, you're really choosing the characteristic of your film. So it's really important to test the lenses that you're looking for.
Testing is something universally loved by DPs, but there are so many jobs where you don't get a chance to test anything. And having a comprehensive test like this, not only that DPs that don't really have the time or the budget to go in and prep and test can look at, but something that they can bring to a director or bring to a producer and say, hey, these are the choices that I'm looking at, can be so helpful.
There are a lot of subjective resources out there for people to stumble upon.
You could watch no lens tests and just listen to people's opinions, subjective opinions of what a lens does or is, but it's all adjectives, and adjectives are subjective.
I'm a very strong believer in that, about looking at these tests without knowing which is which. Because we are biased, because we are, I read an article is saying that this brand is sharp and wonderful. We believe that they are having the same look.
There is such a variety of lens options for the full frame format. With that many lens options, it would be overwhelming for most people to go out and conduct their own lens tests for their own project. It's difficult, but it's the only way to really know, to be able to A/B or A/B/C/D multiple lens sets to find out which is the right option for your project. I truly believe stepping up from Super 35 to full frame for lenses that can cover both formats, it's like the lenses have a whole new identity. For instance, in our very first round of testing, we tested K35s, and now we're testing those same lenses in full frame. I'm excited for people to actually be able to side-by-side compare the same set of lenses in two different formats. That's one of many features that this growing lens library that we're creating gives filmmakers.
So I think full frame is really grand, and I think every DP wants to shoot full frame.
It's almost ideal. You get that larger image area, you get that separation between subject and background. You're magnifying your image less, but you also still have a fairly compact form factor. A lot of the lenses that we're testing, they're not huge, but they're still fast.
You put, those older lenses on, these newer large format cameras, and it's just this amazing softness, yet still sharp. Detail, but milky detail.
I happen to like shallow depth of field. I love to be able to direct the audience's attention to a very specific portion of the frame.
And you get really interesting effects at the edges or top and bottom.
You just can really sort of lean into all of the fun parts and characteristics of those lenses, whether it be low contrasty, or maybe it falls off on the edge, or you get some RGB aberration or anything like that. You get to see all of that.
With subjects closer to the camera, you can actually hold close-ups a little bit better.
It just looks so good. Large format, full frame just looks good. It looks how motion imaging ought to look.
Being here for this lens test is so exciting because it reminds me of how incredibly collaborative and education-focused the cinematography community is, whether it's the manufacturing side or it's the artist side. Everyone really just wants to work together to create the best images and the best technology to create the best images.
It's been great watching the test evolve over the years from just a few of us to more and more people jumping in and realizing how awesome of a resource this is.
I don't think there's ever been such a consistent amount of testing done at the same location with the same set, where you can go back a few years before some of the lenses that we're testing right now even existed and actually do an A/B comparison.
It's going to be such a useful tool for a huge range of cinematographers and directors, all the way up to major ASC cinematographers that are trying to make a lens decision for their next feature film.
This moment of time is a really exciting time for a cinematographer because there's, I think, never been that many lens options out there.
Every lens has a purpose. Every lens delivers a unique look that's right for a project, that's right for someone. And I hope that this test helps people find those lenses, that helps them discover ones they didn't know about.
There is so much passion and love for filmmaking and the technology and the science and detail that's going into this. It's addicting and it's inspiring.
We want people to trust us. We want people to trust these tests.
We're all super excited about what we have in store.
To be able to helm something like this, it's a huge honor. And I just want to say to anybody that came out, even if you were here for a day, even if you came out just to look around, thank you.
We would never have been able to pull this off if it wasn't for the generosity of our partners.
ARRI was very generous with giving us 2 Alexa LFs and some lenses. Zeiss was also a partner and donated 3 sets of lenses, which was a huge honor.
Matt Duclos personally put every single lens that we tested on the lens projector.
Aputure donated lights and labor for many different areas in this entire shoot. And of course, we have to thank our partners Sigma, Athos Insurance, and On the Mark Media, as well as Canon, Schneider, Tokina, Rokinon, and J.L. Fisher for their contributions to this test.
I am blown away by how willing the rental houses in Los Angeles are to collaborate with us on this project. And I hope that people appreciate it and benefit from it and just know how many talented people dedicated so much time to make this happen.
All I hope is that it inspires each and every one of you to do something meaningful and to tell cool stories. If it does just get you one step closer to making a film, then we've done our job.
The thing that is most important to me about this test is that there could be a kid watching this on their cell phone that just found out that they want to be a cinematographer. If they can go into the deep dive that I wish I could have been able to do into these lenses at that time, this is for you. This is for you. Like, if you want to go into cinematography and you just want to learn about lenses and you think it's cool, like, this is for you. This is why we're all here.